Let's barbecue.
Yeah, maybe enough.
Let's grill.
A little bit?
Burgers.
A lot?
Brats.
How much?
None.
Bring it on.
This guy hates America. He's telling you to stop eating meat in the summertime. He's Ron Dummar,
Let's attack
the doctor.
the great American traditions.
I'm Nick the Curious
boy.
Patient, and we talk about seasonal eating sometimes, and you have a big list, and I thought, why you should eat less meat in the summertime would be kind of a sexy title here, but that's not really everything that we're going to talk about. But it's interesting because you talk about warmth and cold, and you're Dr. Ron Dummar with Community Health and Wellness in Heber. I'm one of your patients. I'm curious, and we have this podcast together, but I think it's a good place to start. Why we should eat less meat in the summertime, and then what foods you encourage us to eat more of. We'll get to that in a second. And so don't kill the barbecue, because I'm still going to eat that hamburger, by the way.
Yeah, it's going to be really difficult to get rid of the favorite American traditions. And I don't know that we need to, but certainly meat. When you look at meat and we're saying, okay, when's the best time to eat meat? Well, technically, let's look at the characteristics of meat, especially the type of meats that we're using with barbecues. It's usually red meat, beef, typically. And beef has arachidonic acid. It's got a variety of different compounds and substances in there as well that add to kind of nutrient density. It adds also to heat generation. Arachidonic acid is pro-inflammatory, okay? Now, inflammation is not necessarily a bad thing.
And you're not anti-meat.
And I'm not anti-meat.
No, not at all.
No, I think meat is actually it's the easiest place typically for us to garner nutrients from is by eating meat, eating the flesh of other animals. Now, however, there are a lot of people that are committed fully to a no animal diet, right? No, which is just fine as well. It's a matter of, okay, what do I do in these different scenarios and situations? Today we're talking about meat.
Okay.
Okay.
You mentioned the acid.
So arachidonic acid, and where heat generates, pro-inflammatory. So exercise, a lot of people don't realize this, but when you think about it, you'll go, oh yeah, exercise is also pro-inflammatory. It gets it's the blood pumping, gets things moving. It starts eliminating and detoxifying. We can clear things from the body. We open the pores. We release sweat glands, right? And we're clearing water and fluid as well. That's our detoxification process is exercise, especially for males because we don't have the monthly detoxification process. So that is a really important thing. Exercise is pro-inflammatory. It plays an important role in our health. So inflammation, just saying something is pro-inflammatory doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. Okay? So it's not inflammation bad. It's inflammation how much, right? And when. So when would I want more pro-inflammatory substances in my diet? Well, that would be when the environment is in more of a less inflammatory phase. Well, as you probably have surmised, I'm talking about winter. Cooler months, you're going to want to have warming or more warming foods to get the blood flowing and moving and activated in your body, because the environment is telling your body ultimately to slow down and stop, just like it tells the trees and the bears and animals in general to kind of be a little more dormant. Okay? So we need substances in our body that are going to help us to be able to maintain a level of activity that's going to sustain and carry us through colder months. And meat is the easiest supply for that. So when should we be consuming meat? If we're going to consume meat at all, we should be consuming it more so in the wintertime. But the great American tradition is to have meat, lots of it, in repeated amounts every weekend, right, for all the celebrations that take place during the summer months.
Or
the barbecue.
No jovial joking aside, just every day people eat meat.
Yeah, some people just like
all year round.
Burger, right?
Or I'm like that, but I'm like grass-fed.
There you go. So you're making choices. Steps.
I'm making choices.
There you go. That's
apparently
steps.
There's lots of nutrients in the ground beef. So anyway, I actually eat a lot of it. So I'm just curious, like, if I'm supposed to wean off of it during the summertime for the reasons you just sort of outlined, and probably we could go more into that, what does that look like? I mean, why would I do that, and how do I do it?
So in the summertime, let's look at our level of activity as well. Things are very active. There's a lot more heat. It's very expansive. Our vessels tend to be more open, expanding. You think of your cells. Your cells don't have to be clumped together because, well, it's warm outside, and so everything's expanding. People tend to be, you could say, even from a psychological standpoint, people tend to be more relaxed, right? In spring, summer. That spring, summer phase, it's like, hey, that guy's wearing flip-flops. Oh, he just put shorts on, and everybody seems to be a little more chill and relaxed. And that's the barbecue setting as well. We're out just kicking our feet up. We're on the back patio, and we're hanging out with friends. And that's what is great about the barbecue. That's what's great about summer and spring, is that we can enjoy that time together. So how do we go about saying, I want to participate in these wonderful activities. I want to be social. I want to engage in the freedom and the openness and the expansiveness that I'm feeling the environment is giving me through the warmth of the sun, that are the rays that are more directly hitting me now, right? So how do I engage in that, but not be engaging in it in a way that's going to take me too close to, the sun, let's say, or too close to being overheated? If I'm over-consuming or consuming meat repeatedly day in and day out, and I have a hot environment, it's a lot higher likelihood that I'm going to develop inflammatory type of conditions in my blood, cardiovascular system. Very likely I'll start depositing cholesterol and develop fatty plaquing, or having oxidative stress develop within my cardiovascular system. And that's because I'm pouring too much heat into the body all at once. Okay. Well, so some people say, well, what about taking a cold shower? Well, that's something that could actually mitigate that effect for you in the summertime if you were one of the people doing an ice bath or doing a cold shower. But let's just go back to the meat for a minute. This is what I would do. How do I reduce my consumption of meat during the summer? And that is, I would say, to maybe limit the amount of meals that you have in the summer. So you could have 2 large meals a day as opposed to 3. Some people eat 6, right? I am a fan of getting your calories and your nutrients in a window, right? Somewhere between a 8 and a 12-hour window to consume your food and your nutrients. So if you can consume your food and your nutrients within that window and have, say, 2 meals, that would be ideal. And then it's like, okay, am I eating meat for both of those meals? Am I eating sausage? If you can have just one of those meals contain meat, well, that's a good step. Or like you're saying, Nick, if I can change the type of meat. So meat itself, certain types of meat have different ratings of generating inflammation, okay? So your chicken, for instance, is going to be a little different than the beef. And lobster is going to be different than your beef as well, right?
So is beef on the highest end?
Beef is warm. It's not quite on the highest end. Actually, lamb and goat are on the highest end, believe it or not. In the moderate, it would be pork. So a lot of people tend to like pork. That's a neutral, where I would say it's more neutral. Beef is more warming. And then you've got the lamb and goat that are hot. The things that are cold or cool are like clams, lobster, some of your deep sea.
Where's salmon in there?
Salmon I would put at the cool.
Okay, so salmon might be a better alternative to ground beef.
Absolutely. So throw a flank of salmon on there, right? A little bit of salmon. Change the meat. Maybe if you're feeling real adventurous, try a lobster on your barbecue. I don't know a lot of people throwing lobsters just randomly on their barbecues, but you could definitely do fish, salmon. You could even do chicken, right?
So chicken is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, chicken is actually more of a neutral to warm.
Do you recommend chicken? Isn't a lot of it fed a bunch of corn and
yeah, so you're bringing up a totally different
Right.
topic right now too, which is I almost talked about that a little bit with the ice baths. A lot of these people that do the ice baths, they'll clean the basin and they clean it with chemicals. Okay, so it's like, okay, yeah, if you're cleaning with chemicals and you're dipping in an ice bath, you're absorbing these chemicals into your body as well. Well, those chemicals are inflammatory. But if you're doing an ice bath to try to control some of the inflammation in the body and to elicit a nice immune response and to support the autonomic nervous system, well, now we've just added another layer of trouble, so to speak. So yes, you have to be careful. Chicken is probably one of the most rampantly abused meats, I would say, as far as the way that it's raised. And you look at some of these farming methods that they've gone about with chickens. Some of these chickens can't even stand. They're raised, but they've never even stood because they grow so quickly. Ugh. Because they pump them full of hormones and the feed that they're using. And then they just, they slaughter them before they even hardly have a chance to stand up.
So it's worth spending the money on the organic chicken at the health food store or whatever?
It's worth your psyche.
Yeah.
If you're a person who, again, it depends on where you fall. Some people are just like, whatever, man. This is what we've been doing for years. We raise chickens, and hey, if that's where you are, I get it. But not everybody is there.
Okay.
And some people can't be there. They feel like because of price or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we're not here to fault people, but we are. I mean, I think it's important to do something. Let's put it that way. Regardless of what you choose to do something that you feel is making the world a better place.
Which could be making you a healthier person.
Absolutely.
So obviously chicken is a more neutral meat. I mean, and you're telling me that the inflammatory nature of these more red meats can probably make you less well in the summer months. So give me other tips I can implement. Obviously, you're saying if I'm trying to eat within the 8-12 hour window, whatever, probably better to have it like maybe a big lunch.
I would do a big lunch. I would have super healthy. Think of like the healthiest thing you can put together, right? And that doesn't mean meat is not healthy, but super nutrient dense. I would say vegetable heavy. Fruits are fine, really good for breakfast too, because they do have good quality sugars in them, right? But when you break your fast breakfast, that first meal of your day, it should be very nutritious. It should be nutrient dense, and it should be ready to power everything that you need to go take on that day. That's what you should be thinking of with breakfast, right? And so that's why I've recommended maybe just doing 2 meals rather than 3. Because first of all, when you're going to fit 3 meals into an 8-hour period, if that's the span of your consumption. And then the other one is looking at it and saying, okay, let's say I start and I have my breakfast around maybe 9-ish. I have my breakfast around 9, 8 or 9, and not everybody can do this, okay? It might have to be earlier. But then if I did that, I might have my next meal around 3 or 4, right? And then I would be done for the day. Now, when you look at social events and interacting with friends and different things, I realize there's so many different things that need to be taken into consideration there. And you might alter it. You might say, okay, well, in this case, I'm actually going to have my breakfast be closer to 11 or noon. And then I'm going to go to this barbecue with my friends, and we're going to, socialize and relax and have a really good time. And I'll make some healthy meat selections there. But that's going to be a significant meal for you as well.
So what are the, I don't want to go too long on this. Maybe we can talk about some of the vegetables and fruits that are really good for summer months. Because I said we give people some alternatives. People also might be like, hey, that's not filling me up, dude. Like, how am I supposed to get full at a meal if I can't have my steak or my ground beef or whatever, lamb? How do I get full off a meal and not be hungry in 2 hours? So maybe just give me some of the food, whether it's the veggies or the fruits or.
For sure. So
are grains inflammatory? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and again, everything has a
does.
spectrum of heat, right? Or a burn property or temperature at which it's consumed. And so the higher the burn property, the more amount of heat it takes to burn something, the colder that substance is, right? The more dense, you could say, or heavier that substance is, or cold. So things like cucumber, right? Cucumbers are really good to consume and to eat. It's very cooling. It's very anti-inflammatory. Celery is very anti-inflammatory.
How about cucumber
very
skin?
Cooling.
Is cucumber skin good?
Yeah, you can eat cucumbers. Again, as long as you wash it.
Okay. How do I properly wash my veggies?
So with water in my opinion is your best cleanser unless your water is not clean. So if your water is clean and you have a good adequate source of water, that's your best cleanser. Some people have these systems where they can make more alkaline water, and cleaning with alkaline water is great, or they'll soak their veggies in alkaline water. And that's a perfectly good way to try to get some of the pesticides or residues off. We had we got a report just recently from the city on the water quality. I don't know if you received that, but we got this report and I was reading through it because I'm super curious about the water quality. I have a full home water filtration system in my house anyway, because to me your water source is huge. It's everything. And we get contaminants in our water sources for a variety of reasons. And I was looking through each of the different potential and possible contaminants that they were testing for, and they showed when they tested and the amount of the contaminant. And I just thought it was interesting because the reasons that they were giving, and some of them were like, well, this comes from orchard residues. And they didn't necessarily say, chemical toxicity that's sprayed onto your food. But the orchard residue, that's what it means, right? Is some of that residue ends up in our drinking water. Now, if some of that residue is in our drinking water, then some of those food products end up on our plate. Now we have an overall higher amount of chemical toxicity and exposure, right? So we've kind of jumped back into this chemical toxicity or chemical exposure discussion, but I think it is important for people to recognize that we can get it in so many ways. And oftentimes, even though you may get a water report and it shows, oh, it's within the acceptable range, it doesn't mean that you're not necessarily getting it somewhere else. Fluoride's another one. One of my favorite reasons that they gave for the fluoride contamination within the municipal water was added as a supplement for healthy teeth. And let's do a different podcast on fluoride. Can we write that down?
Sure.
On fluoride and teeth, and whether or not that's actually a healthy supplement to provide adequate enamel strength for your teeth. Because I definitely have some questions on that. But that was interesting for me, and I had to chuckle a little bit because here throughout the whole public idea, the whole culture, it's through our public health systems. It's like our water and these. The idea is that this chemical fluoride is somehow healthy. It's health promoting, and I think we have to really ask the question: is it? So we went off on a tangent.
We're talking about meat.
So washing vegetables. You asked me.
I brought us
Yes.
there. Yep.
So use good, clean water. It's the best way to wash your vegetables. Scrub them a little bit if you want to. Sometimes apples are really known to have a lot of toxic sprays to them. They're also known to have a waxy residue sprayed on them or applied to them to try to prevent. It allows for a shine. So when you buff it up, it allows for it to look really shiny. And it also prevents it from looking like bruised or from getting certain pests and things in it. So if you want to get rid of a waxy residue, you'd have to soak it in warm or hot water, right? And so, doing the typical brush on your shirt, well, that helps and it buffs it up and it looks real shiny, but it's not necessarily getting rid of the waxy residue.
So should I just peel my apple?
So, well, if you peel your apple, that solves the problem. But there are a lot of good nutrients and anthocyanidins and antioxidants and anti-inflammatory substances in the peel of the apple.
Of course there are.
Yeah.
Complex. So we've talked about watching your veggies.
Asparagus is another good cooling food. Asparagus can also be beneficial for the kidneys and the renal system, the urinary tract. So asparagus is a good one. Bananas. Bananas are really good. Obviously seaweed, if anyone's eating seaweed. My kids love these seaweed snacks.
Yep, mine do too.
They really like those. That's a very cooling food. It comes right out of the ocean. The meat in that area, right? The lobster and the crab, the clams we talked about were very cooling as far as meat sources. Dandelion. So dandelions we usually look at as pests. But if you put dandelion greens in your salads, it adds an antiviral, an antifungal, an anti-cancerous effect to your salad. And it's very anti-inflammatory, very cooling. So these are things that you can do to mitigate. Let's say you are at a barbecue and it's like, okay, what do I want to do to try to balance out my consumption of meat? Well, maybe I don't have to just eat meat in the winter and only eat veggies in the summer. Maybe if I aim for some sort of neutral ground, I could eat more warming or hot meat like goat or lamb, and I could consume that with some cool vegetables or fruits and bring my overall diet into neutral.
So what are some good summer fruits that are going to be cooling? Watermelon?
Yeah, watermelon for sure. And that's a classic one everybody knows, right? People love the melons, watermelon especially. But banana, I mentioned banana before.
Yeah.
It's cold. It's not just cool. It's considered cold.
And there's not too much sugar in these?
So banana can have more sugar, but again, the fruit sugar that you're getting from banana, it's a real food. So don't be careful dancing around processed carbohydrate sugars that you find on your shelf or added sugars versus fruit sugar. Fruit sugar is also bound. It's generally bound to other minerals, which give it a less inflammatory effect, and it provides a cooling effect to the body. So the density of minerals that are in your food actually result in less likelihood of spikes of insulin. Okay. So other fruits, cranberry, grapefruit, mangoes, persimmon, all of those are very, very cold or cooling. You can also do avocado. That's one of my favorites.
Is that good year-round, or is that especially good in the summertime?
It's cool, so it can be used year-round. And you often use avocado in combination with peppers, right, or with spices, with warming foods. And so that would bring more of a neutral substance, right, for your consumption. Avocado I would use year-round.
I
use it year-round.
Every day. I don't even love the taste, but I'll have it with eggs in the morning, and I'll just be like, this is good for you, Nick.
So I like avocados, and I like bananas. I really like avocados, and I like bananas. I think they're easy to get. I think you have to be careful sometimes with sourcing them. But typically because of the thickness of the banana skin, right, and the thickness of the avocado skin, it's protecting the inner fruit enough from any toxic exposure, chemical residue, or anything, that they're pretty darn safe foods to consume. They're anti-inflammatory. They're very cooling. So you remember, if you're eating those in large amounts during the wintertime, you'd want to make sure, you could add some cinnamon. Cinnamon with your banana will help to warm it up because it's a warming spice, but also it's going to help with any sort of nefarious effect that the banana people worry about because of the sugar content causing problems with glucose in the body. So your cinnamon actually counteracts that. It helps with utilization of sugar in the blood. So, and it will help warm your meal overall, so it's not so cold, it's more warming.
The cinnamon?
Cinnamon, yeah.
Wow. You learn something new on the Be Well Now podcast every time you listen.
Every day.
where are we? Are we good? Are we feeling all right?
I'm good. I'm good. Wherever you want to go, man.
I'm feeling good about this. I'm gonna try to add some of these cooling foods to my meat, and then see if I can eat less ground beef and maybe try some chicken.
Yeah.
And maybe some salmon.
So what I aim to do, personally, I'll leave you with this note. What I aim to do with most of my meals, all of them really, I aim to have half of my plate be veggies. Half of it.
Visually.
Yeah. Half of my plate. And usually it's like a little piled up too, right? So you could have steamed veggies. You could have veggies on the grill. You could have, however you want to do your veggies. Veggies that are steamed are probably the best, especially in the winter, because you've added an amount of heat to them and you've made it easier for your body to digest. You can have raw veggies like cucumbers and carrots and dip and things like that or whatever in the summer, especially if you're at a barbecue and getting ready to eat the meat, right? So it's going to help with the cooling factor of things. But I like to have, when I actually have my plate, I like to have half of my plate be veggies. Okay, and then I think of a quarter of my plate being the meat substance, and then maybe a quarter of my plate being something else, a grain maybe, or not really much at all. Sometimes I just have the meat and the veggies. I would say most frequently that's what I do.
Good times. We'll continue this conversation on another episode as we progress through the summer months. But this is a good primer for folks as we try to enjoy our food and enjoy our lives.
And be well now.
And be well now.
Namaste.
Namaste.